take me to lunch, I'd refused, for several reasons. 1, Paul was waiting for me. 2, I couldn't bear to look my rescuer in the eye after he'd seen all of my wobbliest bits. And 3, in all honesty, I struggled to find any other reason why I shouldn't have seen him again. And yet, I'd let that train pass while thinking about him day after day. And night after night, actually, until I came face to face with him at a meeting with my kid's principal. Meaning that he was my kid's principal who had called me in for, as he'd said, a simple chin wag. Just so you know, when your kid's principal calls you in, it's never for a simple chin wag. There is always trouble lurking behind that call. Of course, it had to be the day that I had a stinking cold and looked like shit, wearing my worst suit that smelled like mothballs because I hadn't had a chance to pick up my dry cleaning. And of course, he had to go and recognize me, what with the gazillion parents he meets on a daily basis. My daughter, only 8 at the time, had mentioned at school that things weren't going very well at home, as my husband Ira and I were divorcing. That had caught my principal's attention, so he'd decided we should meet, just to make sure I wasn't starving them or something. Patient, kind, and gorgeous, he was the dream of many women in and outside the school, and later, in the town of Castellino, where we'd moved to 7 years ago, dethroning Leonardo Cortini as the #1 hunk. Not that Leonardo did anything for me, physically. And what was it with this Leonardo guy anyway? At least a couple of times a year, he tried it on with me whenever our paths crossed. He simply couldn't take no for an answer. I was probably one of the few married women in the province who hadn't slept with him. Even when I was a young, love-starved girl in Boston, I'd have steered clear of this guy whose ego was the size of a cathedral and who thought he was the best thing in Tuscany since Chianti wine. Not to brag, but if you were married to the gorgeous former baseball star Julian Foxham, subsequently my kid's principal, personal savior, and now full-time novelist, Leonardo Cortini wouldn't be your type either. And I, Erica Cantelli, a 43-year-old housewife who was always battling to keep the pounds off, was nowhere near Leonardo's, nor my hunky husband's, I would soon find out, type. So I still had no idea why the Tuscan playboy wanted to play with me on this warm, perfect, early summer afternoon, here among the impossibly romantic and picturesque Tuscan hills dotted with cypresses and olive groves. I wasn't warm or romantic, maybe a little picturesque, nor Tuscan, so why was he even looking my way? "Come on, I give you a ride, Eriha," Leonardo drawled as he came to a full stop, blocking my path. I bared my teeth at him, old habits died hard, and shook my head, pushing my stubborn handlebars as if they were the ears of a donkey that refused to budge. He laughed, and I threw him my famous hairy eyeball, but he didn't seem fazed. "So your husband's out of town again, see?" It was the again that annoyed me. Otherwise, I wouldn't have given him the time of day or been suddenly defensive about the fact that, yes, Julian was out of town again to meet his agent, Terry Peterson, in New York. They were apparently planning the longest book tour in history. If that sounds even remotely familiar to you, then you know the story of my life, because it just keeps getting harder being happy. If you don't know much about me, then you're in for one hell of a ride. Meaning that he was away most of the time. But when he was home, he entertained the guests of our exclusive holiday rentals that, thanks to Julian's connections, had lately become the secret haven for the jet set.